So, like I said in the full review, the Razer Kaira Pros are a decent wireless Xbox gaming headset that have very impressive build quality. And in general, Razer has been knocking it out the park when it comes to build quality regarding a lot of their other products. But today, we're going to compare the Razer Kaira Pros to the Steelseries Arctis ones, which have been my go-to gaming headset for a while now. Regarding pricing, the Arctis ones retail for $100, whereas the Kaira Pros retail for $150, an 800 Dogecoin difference. Now, there's also the standard Kairas which don't have Bluetooth, a shorter battery life, and no RGB. Now, whether you decide to go with the standard Kairas or the Kaira Pros, there are still some very fundamental and crucial differences between the Kairas and Arctis One. But nonetheless, if you want to pick up either of these two headsets, they'll be linked down below. Now, first we've got to talk about build quality. Plainly said, the Kaira Pros are in a whole other league when it comes to build quality. This headset is using sturdier textured plastics, these ear cuffs swivel much smoother, this exposed stainless steel headband looks more premium and has a better click to it, and in general, the Kairas feel way sturdier in your hands. Whereas the Arctis ones, this headset has decent build quality, but it feels much flimsier when compared to the Kairas. However, when it comes to fit and comfort, that's a whole other story. Now, both of these headsets have spacious ear pads that should have no problem accommodating most ear types. And more importantly, both of these headsets have fabric ear pads, which means they're way more breathable than leatherette ear pads, so both of these headsets are going to keep your ears nice and cool even after long gaming sessions in hot summer nights. However, the major fit difference between these two headsets is their weight. The Kaira Pros weigh in at 330 grams, which in general is a little heavy for a pair of headphones, whereas the Arctis ones weigh in at 263 grams. So with the Arctis ones, you can actually forget that you're wearing this headset when you're gaming, whereas with the Kairas, not so much. So overall, both of these headsets fit well, and they both have very spacious and breathable ear pads that are going to keep your ears nice and cool. But personally, I do prefer to wear the Arctis ones because of their lighter weight. But I can't deny that the Razers simply outclass the Arctis ones when it comes to build quality. But now let's talk about tech specs. The SteelSeries Arctis ones have an advertised battery life of 20 hours, which is not bad at all. Whereas the Kaira Pros have an advertised battery life of 15 hours with their RGB turned on. But with their RGB turned off, they have an advertised battery life of 20 hours. Now, I don't know about you, but I would much rather have a longer battery life than have the Razer logo on my headset light up. However, when it comes to charging these headsets, the Arctis ones charge via a micro USB port, which is convenient if you're still using an Xbox One X or Xbox One S because those controllers still charge via a micro USB port. Whereas the Kaira Pros charge via a USB-C port, which is more convenient if you're using an Xbox Series X or an Xbox Series S because those controllers charge via a USB-C port. Now, when it comes to connectivity, keep in mind both of these headsets work with either the Xbox Series X or Xbox Series S, and they also work with the last-gen Xbox One X and Xbox One S. And when it comes to performance, I have zero complaints. Both of these headsets just connect to your Xbox whenever you power them on. There is zero latency, and none of them ever cut out. However, the Kaira Pros connect directly to your Xbox. There are no extra transmitters to plug into your Xbox. Whereas with the Arctis ones, they do have a transmitter, which could be a good thing if you have multiple consoles. Because with this, all you gotta do is just plug it into your Xbox, or you can plug it into a PlayStation, or your Switch, or your PC, and you're good to go. However, the Kaira Pros do have Bluetooth, so if you just want to use this headset as a normal pair of headphones and use them to listen to music or watch a movie off of your phone, you can do that. Whereas with the SteelSeries Arctis One, you do have to plug in the transmitter into your phone's USB-C port, which is an accident waiting to happen. But more importantly, with the Kaira Pros, you can actually play a game and be connected to your phone at the same time. So you can play a game and listen to a podcast at the same time, which can definitely be a big deal for anybody who likes to play a lot of sandbox or open world games. And unfortunately, this is something that you just can't do with the Steelseries Arctis ones. But one very important thing to keep in mind is that the Kaira Pros don't have an audio jack. So if this headset were to die on you in the middle of a game, you're not going to be able to rush and plug them into your Xbox controller and at the very least finish up your game. And in general, this headset does need to be powered on to work. You can't use them passively. So you gotta make sure that this headset stays charged. Whereas the Arctis One does have an audio jack. So if this headset were to die on you in the middle of a game, or if your friends are telling you to get on right now so you don't have time to charge this headset, you can always just use them with a wired connection by plugging them into your Xbox controller. And unlike the Kaira Pros, they can be used passively. So overall, connectivity-wise, the Arctis ones are more robust than the Kaira Pros because you can use them with multiple consoles and PC right out of the box, and you can always just use them with a wired connection if you have to. Whereas with the Kaira Pros, this is a headset that you mainly want to use with just your Xbox, and you gotta make sure that it stays charged. But at least this headset does have Bluetooth, so you can play a game and listen to a podcast at the same time, which could be a big deal for people who like to play a lot of sandbox games or open world games. But now let's talk about sound. Now, both of these headsets sound good, they both get more than loud enough, distortion isn't a problem, and they both have a good amount of physicality to their bass. But if you are a competitive player that likes to play a lot of FPSs, personally, I do prefer the Arctis ones because they have dynamic range compression. Now, what dynamic compression does is that it lowers the volume of loud sounds and it amplifies the volume of quieter sounds. So if you're using this headset to play a lot of FPSs, now let's say Apex for me, if you're using this headset at a higher volume to listen for those footsteps and more nuanced sounds so that you can find your targets, but if you get caught in a gunfight, you're not going to go deaf because this headset will lower the volume of those gunshots thanks to the dynamic range compression and save you from number one, jump scares, and number two, from just going deaf, which is great. Whereas with the Kaira Pros, if you're playing with this headset at a higher volume to listen for those footsteps and more nuanced sounds, and if you get caught in a gunfight, then you are going to go deaf with this headset because gunshots on this headset are super loud. So if you don't want to go deaf, you got to use this headset at a lower volume. But if you lower the volume too much on this headset, then it's going to be a lot harder to listen for those footsteps and more nuanced sounds. So, even though the Kaira Pros sound great, personally, if you're a competitive player that likes to play a lot of FPSs, I do recommend the Arctis ones because of the dynamic range compression. You are going to have a little bit of a competitive advantage because you're going to be able to use this headset at a higher volume to listen for those footsteps, but you're not going to go deaf if you get caught in a gunfight. Now, both of these headsets also have customizable EQs, and you can have different EQ settings for different games. However, if you want to mess around with the EQ settings on the Arctis ones, you gotta do so from your computer. So there is a bit of trial and error when you're trying to adjust the Arctis ones, because you gotta move the receiver from your Xbox to your computer and back until you get the setup that you ultimately like. Whereas with the Kairas, its app can be found on the Xbox itself. So you can mess around with your EQ settings and switch between different gaming profiles for different games on the fly. But finally, here's the microphone test. Now, keep in mind, you can adjust how both of these microphones sound through their app. But for this test, we're going to use both of these microphones with their default settings. Now, the Razers sound very natural and clear, whereas the Arctis ones sound a little bit more amplified and a little more artificial. Now, personally, I do prefer the amplified nature of this microphone because I feel that amplified microphones are much easier to hear over your game's audio. But more importantly, the Arctis one does do a bit of a better job of blocking out ambient noise, because if I were to just stay quiet, you are going to hear some ambient noise in the background, but not as much as the Kaira Pros. Whereas with the Kairas, they don't block out as much noise as the Arctis ones. So I feel that if you're playing with the AC unit turned on a hot summer night, you might be a little bit of a distraction to your teammates. But with all that being said, both of these headsets are great. But when it comes to choosing between the SteelSeries Arctis 1 and Razer Kaira Pros, personally I feel the SteelSeries Arctis 1s are the more robust choice here. From a functionality standpoint, you can use them with more than just your Xbox, and thanks to their transmitter, you can easily swap between any of your other consoles. And if this headset were to die on you mid-game, you can always just use them with a wired connection and use them passively. And from a sound quality standpoint, if you're a competitive FPS player, then you are going to want to go with the Arctis 1s because of the dynamic range compression. Thanks to their dynamic range compression, you can use this headset at a higher volume to listen for those footsteps and more nuanced sounds so that you can track your opponents, but you don't got to worry about going deaf from super loud gunshots. And then there's their fit. Personally, I do prefer to wear the Arctis 1s because of their lighter weight, but I can't deny the Kaira Pros have far better build quality than the Arctis 1s, so they definitely feel way more premium in your hand. They also charge via a USB-C port, which is more convenient if you're using a next-gen console, like either an Xbox Series X or Xbox Series S. And if you're someone that likes to play a lot of open world or sandbox games, then you might want to go with the Kaira Pros because they have Bluetooth, so you can play a game and listen to a podcast at the same time.
If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. It helps out more than you realize. If you want to pick any of the products up mentioned in this video, those will be linked in the description down below, and you can also support the channel by checking out the merch store. But other than that, I'll catch you next time.